Good in election day, everyone.
Yeah, so I looked at the names, it was like.
We're voting for the dog catcher this year. I don't know what we're voting for, but no, there's not a lot. It's not too exciting. This we're local stuff, a lot of local stuff. Just
Yeah,
important.
but I don't, should I invite them to join?
I don't know anything about
class?
local
Should I ask
stuff,
Nisha?
so.
I do.
To join another class?
I do.
Wait,
When the
can I
recording's off,
invite-
you can tell me.
Oh, okay.
Am I friend yourself? Can he come to your class?
Absolutely.
Wait, let me give him the.
Send him from the Zoom. Yeah, you have the Zoom. Forward it to him.
Forward to
Okay.
him.
But we're gonna actually, this is like we're finishing the first half of the Sefer, and that, as we said, there were 14 years of what's called kibush v'chiluk, 14 years of conquering and 14 years of division. So we're gonna get, when I say division, I don't mean division from the people, I mean division of the land. Division of the people we've had for a gazillion years that we're very good at. It's the one thing that people are worried about after this mess is over is what's going to happen with our people. Anyway, but let's learn. So chapter 12, you have it, chapter 12 in Yehoshua, and it's kind of a recap. And what's interesting is that a lot of the names that are mentioned here are never mentioned previously. We have some that we had detailed issues of the battles, but a lot of the names that are mentioned here in this parak actually just kind of thrown. So Rabbi Hatton has an interesting take on it, and he has actually a whole long, wow, Baruch haba, Baruch haba, oh my goodness, with that tan from Israel. The vacation responder message is, I can't take your call, I'm not home in the office, but I'm safe. Did you still put that? We can't put that on here because, like, who knows? Like maybe you work in Columbia or NYU or something. I don't know. That could be terrible. You need a. Beach is never closed. Aline, welcome back. Not welcome home. Welcome back. Yeah. Okay. So the Eila, we have 4 maps that we're going to look at. 2 of them are the same, but one is in color and one is in Hebrew. So I figured that's cool. But one of the, we're going to look at he goes over, Yehoshua goes over what happened up until now with Sefer Yehoshua. So with Moshe. So if you recall, I mean, it's hard to recall because right now we're in Parshas Chayei Sarah, which is, it's our first acquisition of land in Israel. Purchasing of land of Israel in Hebron, Shelley's favorite place. Shelley loves, she wants to buy a summer home in Hebron. It's very cool there.
I'm sure.
Yeah. So what's called Transjordan on the eastern side of the banks of the river, which is why, by the way, we have this term West Bank, because it's the west part of the bank of Jordan. So on the eastern part in Transjordan, so we have, there were 2.5 tribes, Reuven, Gad, and Chatzi, Shevet, Menashe. We're going to look at this in more details as we go along, just to give you the preview that Moshe conquered the battle of Sichon, Og, etc. So Yehoshua recounts that, and then he talks about the 31 kingdoms that he conquered in Israel proper, and the ones that we didn't take, which we saw, which were kind of left open, which we saw at the end of last week's Perek. And then we're going to get, once we finish all that, then we're going to get ready to, and there's a sing-song here thing, which is interesting to look at. And then we're going to get into the actual division of the land. Just as a note, I'm pretty safe to say that next week we're not going to meet, because next week we'll all, God willing, be in Washington, D.C. We just sent out the registration, so for the buses. The biggest conversation we had was, do you spell busing with 1 S or 2 S's? It's a big machlokas amongst the grammarians and the spellers, busing with 1 S or 2 S. And the United States, they say 2 S's, but it still looks wrong to me. They both look wrong to me. And we say 1, but they said they did a survey, 52 to 48 prefer busing with 1 S. I'm just saying. Yeah. So that's it's going to be a long day next Tuesday. It's Rosh Chodesh too. So we're going to down at like 3 o'clock in the morning. Okay.
Wait, so that, just looking at this, the scale is huge.
Yes.
That were small. Is that like that?
I think it had to do with it has to do with the amount of animals and people, and also they wanted, and that's all about, that's only half the tribe of Menashe, and they wanted to be able to forge a connection. Why half a tribe? So that when half your relatives are in Israel, you want to stay connected. You want to be connected, right? That's the thinking. Because by the way, in the beginning, if you look in Parsha in Bamidbar, when in Parshas Matos, when the plea is made to Moshe Rabbeinu, and we're kind of like, really, like after all this, you don't even want to go in, really, that's not so nice. We did all this 40 years in the desert, and now you're saying, I'll stay here, I'm good. Which, by the way, we could relate to. Well, maybe not the last month, but we could relate to that when we're saying, "Oh, Mashiach is coming, I'm going to move to Israel," and we'd be like, "Theater tickets next week." Like, I'm good. Like, I just put the addition on my house. I just got the new CO2 approved today. It's going to get approved. I have a feeling you're going to get your new furnace approved. I want to say it's special tefillah, special tehillim for the Dolores furnace. But when we said, well, we were way too comfortable, so we're not. So here, imagine this slap in the face to Moshe Rabbeinu, but it was only Reuven and Gad. Chatzei Shevet Menashe was added later on. Rav Shamshon Hirsch, also Rav Yaakov Kamenetsky, they pointed out, they said, because he wanted to create dafka to split a tribe in half, because half of them should be in Israel and half should be out, and would foster this connection. And we know that we have family in Israel. Now we have a tons of family in Israel, and even people we don't know. Okay, so let's see the psukim. Here we go. Ve'ela malchei haaretz asher hiku b'nei Yisrael va'yershu es artzam va'yershu es artzam be'evar yardei mizracha shomesh minachal anor ar har chemon v'chol avla mizracha. So I'm going to put the map on the screen so that well, we'll see. You see it on the screen? Okay, let's look first. I'm going to first look at the one where it says territories of Reuben, Gad, half of Manasseh. Okay, let's look at that one. I mean, if you want to look at the bigger, the 31 Canaanite kingdoms is just a bigger view, but it doesn't have anything on the right side. But here we go. Okay, so these are the kings of the land whom the children of Israel smote. We're busy smoting people, and whose land they inherited on the other side of the Jordan towards the rising sun, from the river Arnon to Mount Hermon to the entire plain to the east. Okay, so you could see in the top of the map here, you see it says Hermon right there, and then to the east, etc. But here you have the whole snapshot of what was taking place there. Okay, what's called Transjordan. Okay, you have the second pasuk, Sichon Melech Emari Hayoshev Becheshbon. Moshel me'aroer shal sfas nachal Arnon. V'socha nachal v'chatzia gilad v'ad yabok nachal gvul b'nei Amon. You have Sichon, the king. By the way, these should sound very familiar because when we read through Bamidbar and Devarim, all these battles are recounted in great detail. You have Sichon, the king of Emorite, who's in Cheshbon, who ruled from Aroer. It's on the edge of the river Arnon, and the middle of the river, half of the Gilad until the river Yabok, the border of the children of Ammon. The river Yabok we're going to have, by the way, coming up again in Parshas Vayishlach. That when Yaakov Avinu was crossing with his family, and that's where he encounters the angel after he crosses over the Nahar Yabok. But here you have all the places that are mentioned. Okay, you have on the bottom Arnon River, you have Aroer, you have Cheshbon, right? So if you look carefully on the map, it's all there. You don't have the benefit. The people who are live don't have the benefit of seeing my mouse hovering over it, but that's what I'm doing. I'm hovering over the space. Ashtarot, all these. Ashtarot, Edrei, they're all there. But again, it's important. The maps are so important because you have to understand in context what we're looking at. Okay, so we're not even in Israel yet, Israel proper, though they become part of Eretz Yisrael. The whole question of do they have the sanctity of the land of Israel or not? These types of things, which have been asked for generations. Now, when later in the Navi, when you see, as I mentioned last week, the territory of David HaMelech, I mean, Israel goes way up into Turkey. Don't tell our friend Erdogan about that because he might get even angrier than he already is. But anyway, these are the biblical places. The Ha'arava, third pasuk. Ha'arava, the plain. Ad yam kinrot mizracha, vad yam ha'arava yam hamelach mizracha, derech beit hayeshimot, u'meteman tachar ashdod hapiska. So then you have the plain from the Kinneret Sea to the east. Okay, so you see the Kinneret, you see the Kinneret on top where it says Sea of Galilee. Okay, and then you have that to the east until the Sea of the Plain, the salt, the Dead Sea to the east, and now on the bottom you see the Dead Sea to the east. So like this, basically, it's the map is encapsulating everything that's spelled out here in the Psukim. The way to Beit Yeshimot from the south under the falls of Pisgah, and then you have Pasuk Daled Ugvul Og Melech HaBashan Miyesa HaRafaim Hayoshiv Bashros Be'edrei. Then you have the boundary of Og Melech HaBashan, who's a remnant of the giants. Og already appearing in our parshios now. In this week's parsha, we have Og. Do you know the Og reference? Well, first we had Og at the Teva. Og, there's the famous image of Og. The Medrash says that Og is like hanging on to the outside of the ark. Somehow he went surfing and he was hanging on outside. How they didn't feel the thing listing because this giant is hanging on. These oaks. But they say that it was. How did Sarah Imenu know? Well, okay. How did Sarah Imenu die? She died because they say that she got a report that, oh, hey, I see your son. Oh, by the way, yeah. But who told her? It was the giants. Who was the giant? It was Og. And they said that really, Mud Medrash says that Og really he wanted to get in good with Sarah. So, like, if I knock off the competition, like nothing. Yeah, I mean, everything in the soap operas and the television writers have nothing on the Bible. Nothing. We have the best stuff you can imagine is all found right here in the Bible. Okay. I've said weird saying Bible, but whatever, it's Bible. So that's Og, and he's there. And then you have Pasuk Hey, Umoshel Bahar Chermon. Uvisalcha v'chol habashan al gvul hagashur v'hamachasi v'chatzia gilad gvul sichon melech Heshbon. And then the Chermon, as we discussed last week, way up top in the map, there's Chermon, okay? And the Chermon is, you have Salka, Bashan, up to the Geshurite, Machatite, half of the Gilad, up to the border of Sichon, Melech Heshbon, whatever. There's a lot of places, a lot of people used to rule there, who, by the way, don't rule there anymore, certainly not at that time. Moshe Eved Hashem, always our favorite phrase that we've seen so many times in Sefer Yeshua, in Pasuk Vav, that Moshe Eved Hashem, Uvnei Yisrael Hikum, Moshe, by the way, the servant of God, and the Jewish people, they smote them, they defeated them. Vayitna Moshe Eved Hashem, here it is again, Moshe Eved Hashem, Yerusha. So all the aforementioned places, so that's just Transjordan. That's not even what we would call Israel proper. It wasn't considered the biblical parts of the land of Israel. And therefore they were conquered, and they were given as Yerusha, rightfully so, as rightful ownership, as rightful inheritance to those 2.5 tribes, Reuven to God and half the tribe of Manasseh. Again, the question always comes up, what is the status of those lands? Now, I'm not talking about politically, I'm not talking about international borders, I'm talking about, let's say, from halakhic point of view, and the Gemara has many, many conversations about it. Do you have to bring Meiser? Do you have to bring, or like all those things apply? But a lot. It's a really good question. Is a lot, practically speaking, if you keep 2 days of Yom Tov in Israel, then don't even talk to me. So just don't even I don't want to hear about it. Okay, I just don't. I'm at the point in my life where my daughter can tell you right now, and we keep 1 day Yom Tov in Israel, and but there was a question that came up years ago: do you keep 1 or 2 days Yom Tov in a lot? Is a lot considered part of Israel proper from that point of view? So there isn't the conclusion is that we do. A very, very big rabbinic discussion, but that's just a modern day application. But do you have the laws of Urla and Truma and Meiser and Sanctity of Israel? Yeah. So in other words, it's considered part of Israel proper. So therefore, it's 1 day beyond. If you keep 1 day,
people are supposed to have a theory that we should just put all of the refugees into Eilat.
With the Scandinavians. We have a lot of theories. Okay, lots of theories. Yeah. So but my favorite of all time, I'm sure I've told it to you before. If not, if I have, I'm telling it to you again. But Mrs. Halpern, she live and be well across the street, right? So she used to go with this Shabbos is going to be Sam Halpern's 10th year outside, if you believe it. This Shabbos. And they used to always go to the Ramada, which now is hosting thousands of people, amazing what's going on there to people who've been displaced. But they used to go there for Yom Tov, and Rav Goren came to visit them. Rav Goren, who was like the legendary Rav Goren, who was the chief rabbi of the IDF, and he told them the story. Mrs. Halpern told me the story of how he told her how he single-handedly conquered Hebron. It's a great story because he got there before the army did in the 6-Day War, and like the guy came out and gave him the key. The old Arab guy gave him the key to the city. He writes it in his book. And he's like, okay, I conquered Hebron. Okay, but really they were just scared. They were scared, so they ran away. But he said when they were keeping, they used to keep 2 days Yontif. Now, by the way, this has shifted a lot over the years. 20, 30, 40 years ago, you would be hard-pressed to find an American that would keep 1 day of Yontif in Israel. And they had, if I own land in Israel, if I'm retired. Nowadays, it's a lot shifted, and it's almost the other way around. You'd be hard pressed to find a place where you can go. If you keep second day, you're like, where do I go? Like, I have to get stuck in the hotel or something. So Rav Goren once said to Mr. and Mrs. Halpern, you're keeping 2 days Yontif. He said, yeah. He says, don't bring your gullus here to Israel. Don't bring your diaspora here to Israel. I love that. I love that line. That's my psak. So don't bring your gullus here to Israel, which is so. Right, it's if you knew Rav Goren, and I highly recommend if you want like an inspirational book to read his autobiography, which is now translated into English. It's really, really fantastic. It's really, really quite good. It's a green book. It's published by Maggid Books. Okay, so that's the status of these lands, but that's the way it went on. Is that 2.5 tribes? And of course, they made the deal with Moshe Rabbeinu that we will not settle the lands until everyone else inside is settled. Right? It says, well, your brothers are going to go to war and you're going to sit here. No. You're going to go to the front lines and you're going to fight with them, and you're not going to get a single part of your land until they finish what's there. So that's happening now. Now, Pasuk Zion. Ve'ele malchei haaretz asher hikol Yoshua v'nei Yisrael be'eva hayarden yama miba'al Gad bebikas halvanon v'ad hara chalak olef se'ira v'yitena Yoshua l'shiftei Yisrael Yerushalayim machlokosam. So now let's go back to. I'm going to go back to the. Let's see if you could. I prefer the Hebrew one. I'm putting the Hebrew one because I have my fancy Hebrew speakers are online here. But if you want to go to, that's the color one, or it's the English one, which is here, the 31 Canaanite kingdoms. Okay. Now there you can see those are labeled inside Israel proper, as you could see on the western side of Jordan. Okay, so you have the Jordan River and the Sea of Galilee all the way to the Red Sea, and all these 31 places from north to south are, and there should be 31 there. I didn't count, but I'm assuming it's 31. I know in the Hebrew one it's 31. So here he says these are the kings of the land that Yoshua and the children of Israel they defeated on the western side of the Jordan, from the plain of God in the Lebanon Valley to the split mountain that ascends to Seir. Yoshua gave as an inheritance to the tribes of Israel according to their divisions. Okay. Bahar ubashvela barava ba'ashdod mebar negev hachiti amari prichani brizi v'chivi. These are the mountain, the lowland, in the plain, the waterfalls, in the wilderness, and in the south, the Hittites, etc., and all those people. By the way, these should sound very familiar because Ba'arav, when we make all the prayers for Israel and for the soldiers, we always say they're in the lowlands, they're in the highlands, and then we also add in uvachol makom shehem, wherever they may be. Because they never accounted for in the air, and they never accounted for underground, or they never accounted, let's say, fighting in the water, things like that. We say, I hope it doesn't change, but if you remember in 1982, and then again a little bit in 2006, but in the Lebanon War, when we said the prayer for the army, they would change it instead of saying Migvul Halavanon, which we're saying now from the border of Lebanon, we would say Me Halavanon. Because they were in Lebanon. They went all the way up to the Litani River. They were quite there for a while. So that's just, interesting things as well. I mentioned at Shalshidus this week, I've just been, because they're not in Lebanon. What? No, well, that's just part of, we say, because we don't say Migvul Azah or anything like that. If we would say Migvul Azah, we would say in Azah. We would say, the Gaza Country Club and Resort. Seaside condominiums. What?
Sleeping there for like a month at a time.
No, I can't. Yeah, a lot of things too. When I saw Charles Shidduch this week, I discussed with Rav Stav, who's going to be here this Shabbos, by the way. It's great. Lots of different halakhic questions that came up in the war, and one of them that was. So most of the halakha questions that come up are just awful. They have to do with shivas and yesterday was the National Shloshim Day. They had a moment of silence, and what about the people who didn't know until 2 weeks later, or do they count after Shloshim? They don't. Still, it's like a whole they know when they die, they just don't know if they died or if they. Whatever. It's just so most of those shilas revolve around horror stories, but this one was interesting. Is that already we start saying the Saint Talamata Levracha on December 4th, which is one of the anomalous things in all of Jewish tradition that we use an English date, a Gregorian calendar for that. Why it is, that's a whole other conversation. Fine. In Israel, they start at Zayin Cheshvan. So when I went to Israel, and you were saying Saint Talamata, right? So the whole question is, do you say it because rain is not good for the fighting in the mud? So they had a whole suggestion. He told me a whole. I couldn't remember. It was like I'm like that would make davening way too long. There's no way I would switch it. But
the easy answer is bracha. You have to trust. You say it, and you trust that
it's for
Hashem
bracha.
knows where the bracha
Right.
is needed.
Exactly. That's why we say if you say Talamatar, livracha. Livracha. Often you will hear people, especially in the Sephardic community, when we say, especially in the repetition, when the Chazan says Mash V'urach Mored HaGeshem, somebody in the crowd will yell out livracha. That it should be for a blessing, because there's rain could be blessing, rain could be not. So that's what's happening there. So here, all these places that are mentioned, which we say in our prayers today, etc. Now, look in. I don't think you have it in yours. I don't think you have it. Look at verse 9. I'm starting from verse 9, right? And flip the page for me. Can you turn the page for me? Yeah, just turn the page. Oh yeah, no. You see, but look at this. So look at this. Okay. So this is called a shira. Now there are different times in the Chumash or in Tanakh when the structure of the text actually follows a certain way, and I'll explain it to you in a second. But I just want to read. But it seems quite, and it goes all the way till the end of the chapter. But it seems almost redundant, or I don't know, annoying, or what. So look at this, and it goes to list. Melech, and each one is echad. By the way, so okay, first of all, when you see this, what does it remind you of? Yes, saying good, say better. The 10 sons of Haman, right? Because it says extra credit if you can name it by heart. Yes, oh my gosh, I came up. I'm teaching someone how to learn Megillah Esther now, and I wanted to. It's a young boy, and I wanted him to learn the way I learned. So I found the recording, 40-year-old recording from our shul, the guy that used to learn in our shul, who was phenomenal by Kriya. So first I had to find the tape. I found a cassette tape. Then I had to find the tape recorder. I found the tape recorder. It wasn't really quite working, but I got it to work. Then I had to convert it to digital. And the best part is that my father, Zichrona Livracha, my father always had a tape recorder in the car with him whenever we drove. He used to drive carpool, but he used to, with like big C or D batteries that were rechargeable. And he used to listen to Audio Digest. I don't know if Mark ever listened. I had this, like, there were these medical tapes that he would just listen to lectures over, and I would send him the tapes. So I was listening, and the funniest part is that, so I grew up going to school listening to, I thought it was about football because they were talking about beta blockers, or they would always say, we used to laugh at the time when they would say myocardial infarction. We'd be like, oh my God, he said like a funny word, right? So he would, but when he was done with them, we would tape over it. So we would like tape from the radio, like with the commercials of 95.5 WPLJ, something like that. So he taped this, and in the middle it stops. Please turn over to side B, and the guy starts his lecture, and then it resumes the Megillah. Okay, so I had to like figure out how to transform it digitally, which I did, which was such a memory. I could hear my father like singing along in the background, which was really nice. But an audio tape, and the Aseres B'nai Haman, the way he did it, and there are different customs. Some people have it that everybody does it, and some people don't. So that's an interesting conversation. So here, very correctly, reminds you of Aseres B'nai Haman because of the way it's structured. You see, you have this is what the Gemara Megillah and Daf Tes Zayin, I believe. The Gemara says that sometimes in a shira we have a half brick over a full brick, which I'll explain in a minute, or a half brick over a half brick, and the full brick in the middle. So let's just read through the psukim, and then I'll explain what that means. So, and each pasuk ends the same. Melech Yericho echad, Melech Ai Asher Mitzad Beisel echad. Melech Yerushalayim, Echad, Chevron, Yarmut, Lachish, Eglon, Gezer, Tvir, Keder, Charma, Arad, Livna, Adulam, Makedah, Beitel, Tapuch, Chefer, Apek, Lesharon, Madod, Chatzor, Shimon, Maron, Achshaf, Tanach, Megiddo, Kedem, Yaknaam, LeCarmel, Dorlin, Afador, Goyim, Gilgal, Tirtzach, Echad. Now, by the way, why does it have to say Echad each time? Right? Couldn't it just give me the last one? Read them all, and it says Kol Malachim Shloshim Echad. All of them are 31. So some of the Mefarshim point out that Echad means that they took out also like the vice president. They took out the president and they took out the guy, they took out the king, but they took out the second in command also, which has always been a conversation in.
But that would be two, not one.
Right, means they, but it says they took out Melech Yerushalayim and then Echad.
Oh,
Another, and
Each one is +1.
yeah, a +1. Yes, like who's your +1? So is there? Now,
Wouldn't say Veh.
no, you're right. It's not literal, but it's an unusual structure. Now, the going back to that, right? It's not.
It doesn't have anything to do with like, you're not supposed to count people, like in Judaism, you're supposed to say not one, not two, so maybe.
So it should say lo echad.
No,
Oh.
because they're bad, so you're like dafka counting them.
I like that. And also could just be counting of saying, you know what, we got Melech Yericho, that's one. Now, by the way, if you're counting, it should say Shtayim, so whatever explanation we come up with, it's not, but there's obviously something very dramatic at place here, which is taking place. And especially since the other time that we have it, as you correctly mentioned, Shelley, is the Seres B'nai Haman. Now, just to put that in perspective, and this is how it appears in the Tanakh. In this, does this look familiar to you? Az Yashir, right? You see that? Az Yashir? Now, this is how the sheet, which we say in B'Shalach, right? What looks different about this one?
They're overlapping.
Correct. They're overlapping. They're staggered. Okay. The way this shira is constructed is that's what it says a half brick over a whole brick. Whole brick is usually that's the language of the Gemara. Half brick is the small part, and a whole brick in the middle. Okay.
Brick means space.
Yeah. Well, or meaning the size of the space. So here, the way you would look at this one is half in Yehoshua, half brick, whole brick of nothingness, half brick. But this is half brick, whole brick, half brick. And it's as if one is supporting the other. Okay. Whereas in this one, what happens if you keep stacking things up higher and higher and higher? It falls down. It has no stability, has no way to last. So that's exactly what happens with Aseres B'nai Haman. I'll read you Rabbi Hatton's take on this. It's really interesting. But in Aseres B'nai Haman, and here also, just want to show you, illustrate, but also visually, the way you see it is that it'll just topple. It'll never last. Unlike the Shira, by the way, the Shira, which we say every single day of the year, we say it in Shachris every single day, Az Yashir Moshe, the victory over the Egyptians, etc. That's something that's L'neitzach nitzachim li'ol me'ad. It lasts forever because we have the proper support. So in
Is it true that the angel wasn't in the midrash? She's not supposed to say as Yashir. She's not supposed to sing as Yashir.
yeah, it was only the Jewish people, right? It was only the yeah.
I can tell you after about that, why the angels are not supposed to sing when an enemy gets killed.
Right, and also because they have there's lots of conversations in the Gemara and in the Medrash about kind of these disputes between humans and angels.
Yeah.
And angels are because angels are perfect by definition, but they also only have no flexibility and they can't go up and down. So therefore, God says to them, did you says honor your father and mother? Did you honor your father and mother? Were you a slave in Egypt? All these things. So therefore, it says you don't merit to have the joy and also the failure, the success and the failure that the human beings have. That's why we make us better than angels. Here he writes, he says, the reason advanced by the Gemara to explain the atypical graphic form is quite compelling. Up until the modern period, and again, I'm not a builder. Maybe we can make when the building inspector comes. Maybe he's there now. She went off screen, so maybe he's there. checking right now to see make sure our house is in good shape. So up until the modern period and the advent of steel reinforced concrete and curtain wall construction. Okay, maybe we know people in building that can help us with this. I don't know, maybe. A building's maximum height could not exceed 6 to 8 stories. Manhattan is just awesome. Greater height can only be achieved by widening the base of the structure so the load can be more widely distributed. Now, I only know this because right now in my parenting development stage, we're in the Lego phase of things. Okay, I never had this before because 5 girls, when they're never touched a piece of Lego in her life. And now it's like the world has become overrun by Lego and what can I build and what can I get, what can I work? And then the worst part about Lego is where do you put them after you build them? Right? And stepping on them is the worst thing in the world.
It's
Nothing.
not their sets. In the old days, you had just basic things and you put them.
You just build them, right? Correct. Now it's a set, and I got the pieces and the whole like, and if you're missing one, you call them in Sweden, and they get it for you, and it's just oh my goodness, it's mamash avodah zarah. Okay, it really is, but it's super cool, really cool. But you learn that you want to stack something to stand up, you need to widen the base. Otherwise, I mean, kids learn that pretty quickly about how to make a stable something. So. Maintaining uniform floor area over the course of a building's rise would produce an inherently less stable structure. The Gemara is therefore suggesting that the graphic form of these songs is an integral part of their interpretation. The tall and slender columns of a text that preserve the names of wicked Haman's 10 sons, comprising 11 lines or stories, meaning like stories in a building, are therefore not only a list of infamy, but also an expression of the instability of evil and an unspoken prayer that having been toppled and deposed, their acts of villainy not recur. The list of Canaan's conquered kings of even greater height expresses a silent hope that Israel's triumph over the evil will not be undone. But let it be noted that this song does not contain a single note of triumphalism, neither smug gloating over the enemy's downfall nor bloodthirsty glorifications of warfare. It is an austere, impassive list of victories that speaks worlds about biblical Israel's attitude towards the need to defeat the enemy while not debasing him. He then goes on. If you, I didn't want to share here. It's just it's a very, very long essay, but I think very, very much worth reading about what we've been discussing the last couple of weeks in terms of, wait a minute, we just took all these people and just kicked them out. And we just completely cleansed the earth of their memories. So, you know, especially with things that people are saying now in public and, you know, but again, but it wasn't like, oh, we went in and they're infidels and we got rid of them, or it was just very like matter of fact. Hashem.
But it said in the beginning.
In the beginning, they made an offer. Either you leave, you join us, or you run, or you fight.
Based
And-
on their Bible. Like
Correct.
certain
And only one took them up on that offer, which is Givon, etc. But yeah, they didn't do that. And they knew it was coming. This is stuff of biblical proportion. Now, does it translate to modern day? I don't know. But a really, really interesting, he had a chapter about the moral dilemma about all of this. This is Rabbi Hatton's book on Joshua.
14 years.
14. Yeah. 14 years.
Okay, wasn't-
No. And
Oh,
there's also part of, you know, what he said, like when we conquer our enemies and we take care of them, hopefully they stay conquered. But the world doesn't work like that anymore. We're not talking about conquering to get territory. We're just talking about conquering so like you can leave us the heck alone already.
no, it isn't. Before Canaan.
I'm sure they have estimates, but you know, since the time of Abraham. You know, but Hashem promised it to Abraham. Abraham was there. Abraham made treaties. This, you know, all these types of things. So, but that's how this ends. The last graphic I want to just show you is the last. See, here you go. That's at the 39 Canaanite king. Just to have an idea of the you know. I wanted to give you a full snapshot of, the borders of Eretz Yisrael, this last one. Okay. The borders of Eretz Yisrael. So if you look here, this is from all the way in the back. The borders of Eretz Yisrael, according to the views of Kaftar Beferach and Tevulas Haaretz. So we can't even agree on what that is. So you can imagine what the rest of the world thinks. But look how far up this goes. Boldface type indicates agreement between the Kaftar and Perek, and italicized names follow the opinion of fine. But shaded areas were not yet conquered at the time of Yehoshua. And by the way, and it definitely shows clearly, but it's like where it says Lebanon mountains and this. So if you look how far up this goes, okay, right now the northeasternmost point of Israel, there is a military base next to Har Hermon, which you kind of like right over here, and you get a nice view of Syria and all these other lovely places. And look how much further north it goes. Okay, where you have, yeah. Imagine that. Imagine if our whole lives we wouldn't be hearing, oh my God, Israel's roughly the size of New Jersey. I don't know what it would be the size of roughly, but it would be so nice and like not be. Maybe that's the only good thing they said about. That's the only good thing they said about New Jersey back then. It's like the size of Israel. I guess because it's like long and skinny like this.
So like, is it like if there were rockets flying to California and I'm like, no, like you hear them. It's that close.
Right. If you were like in Tenafly and they were firing from Washington Heights, it's like that. They'd be like, oh. Yeah, because I said when I saw them, when I was looking at them sort of taking out stuff in Gaza, I'm like, it's as if I'm standing up here and you see an Apache helicopter like around Livingston High School. Like that's what it looked like. I'm like, oh, okay, I see. NIMBY, right? But also, what you notice, look at the south. A lot of the Negev isn't, it's like if you go further down, certainly into the Sinai, it's not there. And here you see on the map also the 5 Philistine cities: Gaza, Ashkelon, Ekron, Gat, and the one that left off is Ashdod, which is also right around Gat. Is also one of the 5 Philistine cities. But this is Israel. Now we're going to see as we go on, there's going to be more maps because we're going to talk about division of the land between the tribes, who got what, why, where, and how. But if you want to read this article, I would highly, I just think it just goes a little bit too beyond what I want to get into now. But it is a good question. It's an important question that we have to ask of sort of the moral clarity of doing what we're doing. Well, God, it's in the name of God. God commanded us. So we could ride that all the way from here till tomorrow and be fine with it. Correct. I mean that's what war is all about. So we, we just want a little piece of Israel. Like leave us alone. You have all that land, everything. Imagine if we got in the oil, like all those crazy things we've said over the years. But here we have up until now. That's the conclusion of the first half of the book, of finishing off what Moshe Rabbeinu started, which is why the chapter started as it did, because the conquering of the land of Israel actually started before they got into the land of Israel proper, when it started with conquering all those kings, Sichon, Og, etc., and those 2.5 tribes, and then coming over and conquering these 31 tribes. Again, it takes a very, very long time. And also what I pointed out in the beginning is that many of these names we had not heard before. Many of these names are mentioned here only for the first time because the Torah doesn't always give us every single detail of everything that happened. It's giving us Begadol. And I think that further supports the point of, we're not trying to rub it in your face and we took out this one, took this one. Here we listed it just so you should know that for factual purposes, what's what and who belongs to where. But ultimately speaking, it's, we took out this, we took this one. This is part of Israel. Okay? Love it or leave it. Or maybe love it or list it. I don't know, whatever your HGTV preferences are. So, that's the end of the 31 kingdoms. You have it here. You have in Hebrew, you can list the 31. I don't even know if they agree with each other. Yeah, they kind of do. I just like color maps better because they just look better. But here you have all 31 names that are mentioned. Now, obviously, some we're not exactly sure where they are, and the archaeologists and these people are. I just read a fascinating article today, which is in the category of like beautiful and horrible at the same time, is that the Israeli government is now using archaeologists to help identify body remains because they're trained in understanding how to discern between like what's looking at, what you should be looking at, shouldn't be looking at. Just think about that. I mean, it's just,
It was horrible, that article.
yeah, there's like all kinds of horrible. Yeah, so that's our little Israel, our cute little Israel, our beloved little Israel. Look at that. We're just trying to biblically settle, conquer, divide, and hopefully not get killed in the process. So we're gonna see as we go on next time. So again, next week we're gonna be in Washington. I hope everybody can be there with us. And then we're gonna go into detail about all of the territories. The what territories? But the territories that were divided and after they were conquered and then given to each tribe, and that's where the tribes then settle, which we have Arayam Hazeh. So for instance, if you're coming out, if it used to be when they sent mail, like real mail, where I lived in outside of Yerushalayim, they would say Dor Noar Hare Yehuda, Daled Non or DN Hare Yehuda, the mountains of Yehuda, because it's the territory of Yehuda was that in the mountains. And then when all of a sudden on the Route 1 highway, when you come out of the Burma Pass Road and you come down and it becomes all of a sudden flat and you could see out, you could see like to Nof Ayalon to where Shalavim is, that's actually a different territory. And you'll see like when you go north of Yerushalayim, if you're going to go up towards Route 60, it says Binyamin. And that's called Ezor Binyamin because that's the tribe of Binyamin. And if you go up to the coast, it's Naphtali, right? All of these things. So the biblical is very, very much alive nowadays. You see it on the signs all over the place, right? That's all reflects the division which we're going to see. So these are going to become very proper. And then the next time we're going to Israel, you're going to be like, oh my God, yeah, I know that is because we learned that in Perek Tezvav that belonged to Yisachar and Zebulun on the sea, etc. Okay, very good. So we'll pick it up next time. And I hope did the inspector come? Yeah.